بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم أسأل الله تبارك وتعالى أن يجعل نياتنا خالصة لوجهه الكريم. I praise Allah تبارك وتعالى. I thank Allah تبارك وتعالى for the blessing of Islam. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to send countless blessings and salutations on the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, his kind family and his companions, and to protect his nation from everything that he feared for it. And I ask Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala to grant us the sincere intention. I want to start by saying that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam mentioned to us in the hadith related by Imam al-Bukhari in his Sahih, the first hadith in which he told us what means that the actions are by the intention, and every person will have what they intended. إنما الأعمال بالنيات ولكل امرئ ما نوى. And I often think of progress, success, lagging behind, failure, and I try my best to weigh where I fit in what I'm trying to do between those ends. Meaning that I know what I want to achieve. I know what my intention is, what I want to achieve. But it is always good to examine yourself and examine what you're doing to see if you're achieving your objectives. So that is something that I think about. So in order to ensure that you want to achieve your objective, you have to be clear what is your objective? What are you trying to do? And my intention with the Post-Fajr reflections, and inshallah, as my strength develops, I'll go back to the scattered thoughts as well, but I cannot do two right now. I mean, my mind tells me yes, but my body says obviously not. So, inshallah, when they both come together, I'll be able to go back to the scattered thoughts, which I personally, I like. It gives my mind a chance to roam. But what I want from the Post-Fajr reflection is to facilitate a means for the common Muslim or the common individual who wants to learn what is Islam to have access to the traditional way of studying in a language that they understand. That's my intention. I'm not trying to make scholars. I'm not a scholar to make one in the first place, right? I'm not deluded like that, right? Scholarship, as we have learned, is a big field, and it's not for anyone to just claim. I was talking to my wife this morning, about COVID-19 and the vaccine that they just authorized. And I said to her, I don't know anything about that. I'm not a doctor. Right? So we were looking on the internet, looking up, the stuff they say about it, what they put out about the virus. And one thing was 50-something, 55 pages, and then that other stuff. And I said, inshallah, can look into it. And we started having discussions about how viruses are made, and how vaccines are made, and and what about a virus and what it contains. And I'm like, I ain't no doctor. And I was just simply that easy. I'm not a doctor. So I'm willing to listen and learn about it. It's not my field, right? So if I'm going to have a real discussion, I need to refer to experts because I'm not an expert. I don't know. And that wasn't looked at as something blameworthy. She didn't say, what are you, stupid? No, she was like, you're right, you're not a doctor. And we started, looking, researching different stuff, talking about different stuff, right? But as easy as I said that about that vaccine, we should say that about religious knowledge that we don't know, right? I didn't even hesitate to go in and start giving my opinion about it. I said, no, I'm not a doctor. Inshallah, we can look in and find out what doctors say, what professionals about vaccines and, all that stuff. We could talk about that when we know about it. But what we don't know, we should leave it to the people of knowledge, which is a Quranic command. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلِ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Ask the people of knowledge if you do not know. Simple. It's not difficult, right? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam told his companions, the cure to ignorance is asking questions and to learning, right? Don't just do it yourself. So that same concept, we want to apply it to our religion, which is more important than our body. Man, if we die from coronavirus and we die on the state of La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, inshallah, we'll enter Jannah. So, not a big loss. We lost our physical world, some dunya, maybe beloved ones whom we loved, we have to depart from them, but not a big deal. Really, the big deal is if we die as non-believers and end up in the hellfire, right? That's a big deal. The other matters, alhamdulillah, we can do without them, right? So I say all that to say my objective is to make sure that we have this same concept in the religion that I want you to know. So this is not a majlis of ulama. This is not a gathering of scholars, right? So I want you to know that. So if you're looking for how to become a scholar, you're on the wrong program. I'm not an expert. You need to go to experts to be a scholar. But if you want to learn the basic matters of your religion in a way that will arm you and equip you to ask the proper questions to experts and to know certain things as fundamental knowledge, this is your spot, right? So I just wanted to make that clear. Is that clear for everyone? Because I don't want no one to misunderstand my objective, right? And because if you don't understand my objective, you won't be able to follow. You're going to be asking questions that you should ask to scholars. You're going to be bringing up issues that should be brought up to scholars. And that's not the purpose of what we're doing. We want to have a sound, foundational understanding of the deen. So I'm not going to talk over people's head. I'm not going to try to impress someone with a bunch of Arabic. I'm not going to do that. That's not my intention, right? Nor am I going to discuss detailed issues that are not going to benefit everyone, just so someone can play intellectual gymnastics. I'm not going to do that. So with that being said, and I want to make it something that I'm reminded to put forward before I start. Because as I told you, in fiqh, when you're studying Islamic rules, if you don't put these preconditions ahead of the time, it'll go all over the place and you'll miss your target, right? So this is what this is for. And we're going to go from one book to another book to another book to, inshallah, we'll cover all the sections of al-fiqh. We'll have a firm understanding of everything we covered. And then there'll come a point where we're going to have scholarly discussions because we've reached that level in our learning. We took the tartib, the sequence of learning from the beginner. We went first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, sixth grade, and then we'll ultimately get to the university, right? That's our mission. I'm not skipping fourth grade to go to the ninth grade. Those who want to do that, you're a special student and you need to go to the advanced school of Islamic learning. No, I'm just joking, but seriously, because I don't want to get distracted. So with that said, we'll continue where we left off on page number 46 really, with the shurut al-salat, among some of the conditions of the prayer. Naam, go ahead.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. The author, may Allah Ta'ala have mercy on him, said, other conditions for prayer.
So we talked about some of the conditions of prayer before, and among the conditions of prayer, we said at-tahara, purification from an-najasa, meaning that you must remove an-najasa, right? And we talked about what is najasa, what is filth in Islamically, and we talked about how to remove it with purifying water. So now the author is going to go into some additional conditions in order for prayer to be valid. When we say condition, let me give you these terms quickly. You have three terms, and they're Arabic terms, but I'm going to just write them in transliteration so we can follow, right? This is vocabulary that I need you to master, right? So you have shurut, Arcane, and mubtilat. For right now, these are some terms I need you to memorize. Three very basic terms. Shurut, all these are plural. All these are plural words, right? Right? Come on. Shurut are conditions, right? You can use the word preconditions if you like. That means these are things that are not part of the act of worship. They're not a part of the act of worship, but without them being fulfilled, the act of worship cannot begin in a valid manner, right? So then they're not a part of it, but without them being fulfilled, the act cannot begin in the valid way. It would not be valid. So that's a condition. When we say something is a condition for something, and we say the shurut of the prayer, that means they are not part of the prayer, but they must be fulfilled for the prayer to begin in a valid manner, right? Arcane are the integrals or requisites or the obligatory parts of an act of worship. So if we say the arcane of the prayer, then we mean those parts of the prayer that are a part of the prayer, and they must be maintained in order for the prayer to remain valid, right? So we have some Arcane that we talked about in terms of al-wudu and al-ghusl, right? Ablution or the purgatory bath, right? And we said that the Arcane, which are the obligatory parts of al-wudu, are 6 in the Shafi'i school. And we mentioned for al-ghusl, they are 2, right? So if any one of those are missing, then that act of worship would not remain valid, right? Mubtilat are invalidators or nullifiers, meaning if any of those things occur, the act of worship is no longer valid. It has become nullified, right? So whenever we're learning about any act of worship in al-fiqh we're talking about, the essential elements of that act of worship that we must learn as an obligation are: what are the shurut, conditions? What are the arkan, the integral elements? And what are the mubtilat? What are those things that invalidate it? That's the foundational thing. So we want, when we talk about obligatory things, all of these are obligatory. So when we were talking about earlier about enjoining the right and forbidding the wrong, when we were in the section of the creed, and the author talked about we must order the people to fulfill its conditions and its integrals and avoid its invalidators, right? So you must do the act of worship according to its conditions and its integrals and avoiding its invalidators. So that is as an obligation. So here, when we're talking about the conditions of the prayer, these things are not a part of the prayer, but before the prayer can begin in a valid manner, we must fulfill them. Now, go ahead.
The conditions for performing a prayer include: number 1, facing the direction of prayer, the Qibla.
Here, facing the Qibla has 2 issues. I'm going to tell you something. Facing the Qibla, if you're talking about you are in Mecca and you see Al-Kaaba, right? You must face the Kaaba completely with certainty that you're facing the Kaaba. That's when you're close and you can see the Kaaba. Anyone who is outside of seeing Al-Kaaba does that by the best possible what word I want to use here? The best possible means that Allah provided to determine directions, right? And you try your best to face the Kaaba based on that. With that said, when you're not in Mecca looking at the Kaaba, you cannot be 100% certain that you're facing the ayn of the Kaaba, the actual Kaaba itself. You're facing the direction. When we further our studies, we're going to go into details of how to determine, to the best of your ability, the direction of the Kaaba. In the meantime, you follow someone whom you trust in this issue, who you believe is knowledgeable. That's your state at this place. You have to pray. So do not engage in extra things that's going to make your acts of worship difficult. Yeah, is this clear what I'm saying here? Because I'm moving by this fast, but I want to point something to you. And it's going to be your first test to make sure you understood what I said in the beginning. Is it clear or no? I want to know that that's clear what I just said. That's not clear. I didn't say anything about a compass. Stick to what I mentioned. I'm trying to help us. I know some of us want to go extra steps. You're in the wrong class. I need you to understand exactly what I mentioned, not what you want me to say. I'm going to weed out the scholars so that the common people can learn. Because what I learned from this, there are people trying to learn and we be confusing them with our fake scholarly gymnastics. So I'm going to move you out. If you just want to sit and learn, mashallah. But if you want that other stuff, I'm not going to let you hurt the other people. Tayyib. So we got it. It's clear. And we're going to, as we further learn these issues, we're going to go in more details and more details and more details. Barakallahu fikum. Continue.
Number 2, the time entering. Number 3, the individual being a Muslim and having discernment. Number 4, the individual knowing that it is obligatory when the prayer is obligatory and not believing a specific one of its obligatory actions to be merely recommended.
So here's 2 issues. So we said you got to face Al-Kaaba, right? And there are means to do that. If you see Al-Kaaba, you face it directly. If you're distant from the Kaaba, you're going to face it based on direction to the best of your ability. And then there are more signs which we'll learn. We talked about that. Dukhul al-waqt, knowing the time of prayer entrance. So we talked about those times of prayer entry, right? We talked about them, right? When Dhuhr comes in, when Asr comes in, when Maghrib comes in, when Isha comes in, when Fajr comes in, right? Al-Islam, so for the prayer to be valid, it must be done by a Muslim, right? So the person has to be a Muslim. So a precondition for prayer is uttering the testification of faith. At Tamyiz, we talked about that when we said about the obligation of the guardian on the child who reached the age of mental discrimination. That is that age when the child can distinguish between matters. The knowledge that the prayer is an obligation, right? So whenever you're talking about an obligatory prayer, you must know that it is an obligation, right? So every fard prayer, you must know that that prayer is fard for it to be valid. You cannot think that it's a recommended prayer. Now, and not only the prayer itself, but the obligatory parts of the prayer, you must know that they are obligatory. In other words, if there is a fard part of the prayer and you think it's sunnah, even if you pray, the prayer would be invalid. So we talked about knowing what are the conditions, what are the integrals, and what are the invalidators. So we're going to talk about the obligations of the prayer. What are the obligatory parts? So make sure as you're going through this text, when you go back and review, pick out, these are conditions, these are integrals, obligatory parts, these are invalidators, And every time you learn any aspect of al-fiqh, we're going to go through them, keep these things in your mind, right? Now, go ahead.
Number 5. The individual covering his nakedness with something that conceals the color of the skin from all directions except the bottom. For a free woman, it is covering the entire body except for the face and hands. For a male and for a female slave, it is covering what is between the navel and the knees.
Now, so here, covering one's aura. And in the prayer, that is one's unlawful nakedness, meaning that part you cannot show to others, right? Who are not your non-marriageable kin. For the woman, everything other than her face and the hands. And for the man, that which is between the navel and the knees. The navel and the knees are not aura. However, one should cover them to ensure that the aura is covered. You cover those areas. What do I mean? So since even though the navel and the knees are not aura, what is between the navel and the knees are aura in the Shafi'i school. In other schools, the rulings are different. However, to ensure that that area between the navel and the knees is not exposed, one covers the navel and the knee. Now, go ahead.
Prayer invalidators. A prayer is invalidated by, number 1, speaking even two phonemes that do not convey a meaning, or a single phoneme.
So now we're talking about mubtilatu salah. Those things that if they occur in the prayer would become invalidated. Now, so the first thing is speaking, talking during the prayer, right? Go ahead.
Even two phonemes that do not convey a meaning, or a single phoneme that conveys a meaning unless one forgot and the amount is small. Number 2, a large number of consecutive or simultaneous actions like 3 movements, even forgetfully. Number 3, an excessive movement like jumping, even forgetfully. Number 4, adding
read that last line again.
An excessive. Number 3, an excessive movement like jumping, even forgetfully.
No. 3 consecutive movements. Read that line again.
Number 2, a large number of consecutive or simultaneous actions, like 3 movements, even forgetfully. Number 3, an excessive movement, like jumping, even forgetfully. Number 4, adding an essential movement intentionally.
Oh, okay, here. وَبِزَادِ رُكْنٍ فِعْلِي. What was that, number 4?
Adding an essential.
So number 4 is to add an integral that is an integral of action. So you have in the prayer certain obligatory parts, right, that are obligatory statements that you say, like Al-Fatiha, right? And then you have actions like a ruku, a sujud, right? Sit or bowing or prostrating or sitting between the prostrations. Here, to add an additional integral that is an action would invalidate the prayer. Now, intentionally.
Number 5.
So when they say adding an essential movement, you should maybe put that adding an extra integral of action. So you know the integrals, we're going to talk about them when we get to the Arcane of Salah, that there are, like I said, some that are verbal integrals and some that are integrals of action or physical. You got to physically do something, moving. To add that would invalidate the prayer. Now,
Number 5, adding a single action playfully, even if it is slight. Number 6, food and drink reaching an internal cavity even without chewing, unless one forgot and it was a small amount.
Mm.
Number 7,
So
and
eating or drinking.
Number 7, intending to interrupt the prayer, making its interruption conditional upon any matter at all, even one that is typically impossible, but not rationally impossible, and being indecisive about it, i.e., interrupting the prayer.
So here, in other words, to have the intention or anything connected to that would entail leaving the prayer or stopping the prayer would invalidate it. Now,
Number 8, performing an essential element while doubting that one uttered the initial Allahu Akbar. Doubting that one.
which is an integral. So the first Allahu Akbar is an integral. So if you do a whole integral while doubting, having the intention at the time of making Allahu Akbar, this would invalidate the prayer.
Doubting that one uttered it at all or uttered it completely or what was intended or when the doubt about the intention is long lasting.
No.
Number 9, changing the intention, like converting an obligatory prayer into a recommended prayer or the opposite, except with a legal excuse. Conditions.
This section is an addition from the commentator. That's not something that was mentioned originally by the author, rahimahullah ta'ala. Naam, go ahead.
Conditions for prayer being accepted. And the
There
conditions.
are two things here. We have fulfilling an obligation and that obligation being rewarded by Allah, right? So you can have an act of worship. It is valid. That means you are not responsible for it. However, you could perform that act in a way that doesn't earn you reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that means Allah didn't accept it. But you're not responsible because you did perform it. But you performed it in a way that it doesn't get rewardability. So the author mentions among the things for the prayer to be accepted by Allah, rewarded by Allah, are the following. Now, go ahead.
And the conditions for the prayer to be accepted with Allah Ta'ala, glorified is He and Most High, i.e., to obtain its reward and ranks, along with what preceded of conditions for the validity of prayer are, number 1, to intend it for the sake of Allah Ta'ala alone, i.e., for worshiping Allah.
Right. Here, sincerity. One only intends Allahu Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. So that is a condition for all acts of worship to be accepted by Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. Naam.
Number 2, his food, clothing, and place of prayer being lawful.
Here, the prayer of a person who eats haram, who dresses in unlawful clothing, and or prays in a place that's unlawful for that person to be, right? Their prayer is valid, right? Their prayer is valid. However, it's not rewardable, right? The prayer is valid. If they meet all of the conditions, they fulfill all of the integrals, they avoid all of the invalidators, the prayer is valid. However, because of the unlawfulness of their food or of their drink or their prayer, the rewardability of the prayer is lost. Though it is valid, meaning on the day of judgment, they're not going to be held responsible for not praying. However, it's not just fulfilling obligations. We also want hasanat, rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for fulfilling those acts. And that is among the things that would remove that reward. Now,
number 3, having the presence of heart during it by humbling his heart for Allah Ta'ala even for an instant, for he gets nothing from his prayer except what he understood, i.e. comprehended.
So in other words, to have presence in the prayer, right? And to think about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's acceptance and rewarding of you during the prayer, to do that sincerely for Allah, and to be in the prayer, not one's mind floating somewhere else, right? This is an important aspect for the rewardability of the prayer. Now,
Number 4, not being proud of it. Being proud of it is seeing oneself worthy of rewards in paradise for having performed it. Instead, one must see that one deserves torture in the fire for one's good deeds, to say nothing of one's bad ones, due to the terrible etiquette one has with Allah Ta'ala in them. What is
read that again?
not being proud of it?
Go ahead.
Being proud of it is seeing oneself worthy of rewards in paradise for having performed it. Instead, one must see that one deserves torture in the fire for one's good deeds, to say nothing of one's bad ones, due to the terrible etiquette one has with Allah Ta'ala in them.
Here, that is important. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he told his companions that none of you would enter paradise based on his deeds. And they were amazed. And they said, not even you, O Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, not even me, except that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala covers me with his mercy. So that our actions that we do not necessitate that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts them from us. Rather, the pious people, they always considered their deeds as deficient in terms of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's majesty deserves from us, right? It's something that one should keep in mind, that what Allah deserves of how he should be worshipped and what we give him, it is totally deficient. And with that, none of us should be amazed at our own deeds, right? You know, I'm doing it, so I prayed, so, you know, alhamdulillah. No. You prayed in form, but did you pray in reality? Right? You should ask yourself that. In form, you prayed. And in reality, have you not prayed? You should ask yourself that. Yeah, I got the form. I went to Ruku, I stood, I recited Fatiha, I recited Surah, I bowed, rose up, prostrated. But did I really pray? Was I really communicating with my Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala? Or was I just getting the obligation off my neck? Right? One should think about that. And if you be honest with ourselves, you know, I was listening this morning, something, I'll give you this. I was listening to one of the imams in Lebanon from a masjid that I used to attend, right? And, you know, it's been so long, so I've seen, he's a young guy, he's the new imam, and, he, you know, and so I was listening to him. My teacher runs the radio station for the government, you know, for the Islamic radio station for the government. And so I remember, you know, all of these things. And I was listening to the virtual khutbah today. And I was very, very impressed with the imam, like beautiful speaker, right? And I was saying to myself, right, we have so many knowledgeable people around the world, right? Like so many, right? We're so numerous, over 1 billion Muslims, right? But we are so weak. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his companions and the generation that followed them, right? They didn't have as many learned people as we have. I said learned, and I put that in parentheses. Why? Because it shows you that all knowledge is not the same, right? We have a lot of information, but very little knowledge. Very little knowledge. We have a lot of facts. We have a lot of stuff in our mind. But we have so much knowledge that the kuffar who wish the destruction of humanity out of their ignorance are ruling over all these great scholars. I want you to think about that. Like, it would make you think that our deen is weak. Our deen is not weak. It is a difference from form and reality. We have a lot of form, but we're missing a lot of reality. We have the form. We have the sciences. We speak Arabic. We recite Quran. We memorize Hadith. But the reality of all that is missing in our lives. That's not for every single person. I'm talking about in general. And the result of that is we are subjugated people. And our religion is not changing the world as it's supposed to do. When it was given to people who had more than just information, they understood reality, it transformed them, and they transformed the then known world. I want you to just think about that, right? Just think about it. We have a lot of knowledgeable people, information-wise. Why are we in these conditions? Isn't the knowledge supposed to change us? Isn't the knowledge supposed to lead to something else? So that means something's missing, right? And what we want out of the prayer is to find that missing element, right? So when we're learning, these are missing things. We learn knowledge and think we're knowledgeable. Instead of learning knowledge and remembering above everyone that has knowledge is Allah who knows everything. So no matter how much we know, we still got to learn because we haven't learned what we know. You understand what I'm saying? But we'll learn like, I actually know. You don't. And our teachers used to tell us one of the greatest signs of that is you rarely see people say, I don't know, and Allah knows best. But the righteous scholars who made a lot of change, if you read their works, they would make a whole talk and then at the end of it say, Allahu A'lam. Allah knows best. SubhanAllah. If we have energy tomorrow, if Allah gives us energy, I don't know, we may not. If we can continue with al-adhkar, with the remembrance of Imam Anawi, you will notice Imam Anawi, and all of us know Imam Anawi, the author of the 40 Hadith in the Gardens of the Righteous, and his book Al-Adhkar, the Book of Remembrance, which we're reading on Saturday mornings with Sayyidi Abdul Rahman. Watch how many times, and I mentioned it in the reading, Imam Anawi says, Allahu A'lam. He'll make a whole statement, he'll say this, Wallahu A'lam. And watch us, watch speakers. I want you to pay attention. Watch when we teach. Count how many times you watch lectures. Just go online, you do it, right? Listen to people, watch them write, watch them, and see how many at the end of their statement they say Allah knows best, or how many times when they're talking they say I don't know. Pay attention to that, right? And that's all part of that last line that he mentioned, which was number 4. وَأَنْ لَا يُعْجَبَ بِهَا, and that person doesn't become fascinated with themselves, with their deeds, right? Even if I pray, I'm hoping Allah accept my prayer, right? I don't say I prayed and, mashallah. La. Oh Allah, please accept this deficient act of worship which was distracted in a state of pride and arrogance. Subhanallah. Right? It's something we should think about. And I gave you a reference. Imam Anawi, who reached a high rank in knowledge and understanding and all of the Islamic sciences, watch how many times he put himself down. He didn't say, and Imam Anawi, I know, and he knew, right? He was still, what? Low before Allah all the time. But we're not taught like that. We're taught to be arrogant. We're taught to be arrogant. Not intentionally. No one says go be arrogant. But the way they instruct us produces arrogance. Right? And that's why we can't sometimes even sit and perfect our acts of worship, because we're so quick to say, I got that already. Next. No, stop. Get it right. Get it to a way that you present it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as the best you could do. Slow down. Right? It's a lesson. And I remember this, why I'm thinking about this. I remember one of my teachers I studied this book with, right? And I had studied it maybe 5 or 6 times before I actually was studying it with this particular teacher. And so because I had studied it so many times, I'm like, and this sheikh was Syrian sheikh, I knew he knew some stuff. I'm like, we getting ready to get deep. And it was one-on-one, just me and him. And he wouldn't allow me to ask any questions. I was like, yo, man, just me and you. He's like, read. He make comment here, comment, read. And he kept going like this, right? 30 minutes a day. We were doing it every day for 30 minutes, right? And when we finished, he was like, did you understand? I thought to myself, I said, no. He said, okay, we'll read again. It wasn't that I didn't understand. He was teaching me something. I didn't understand what he was teaching me, right? He was teaching me how to concentrate on the text. Make sure you understand the text so that you can live the text. So if you keep adding to the text, you're never going to understand what you should be doing. And it helped me a lot. It helped me a lot. And I want to try to get that across to you, right? And I think I haven't done a great job, and I want to do a better job, right? Because I'm discovering we're harming ourselves with our arrogance, like we are. And we don't realize that we're arrogant. We don't. We're really harming ourselves. And we've made an environment that produces arrogance. And we should remove ourselves from these environments. It is okay to be Abdullah. Be Abdullah. That's fine. Be a servant of Allah. That is okay. Even if no one know you, but Allah knows you are his servant, that is sufficient. If Allah elevates you, fine. If Allah makes you popular, fine. For yourself, just want to worship your Lord, right? That's your intention. With everything you do in your life, I just want to serve my Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala. You understand what I mean? Even if you go to work, I was getting ready to give a Mr. Charlie, right? When you go to work fulfilling the command of your Lord. Your Lord told you to seek a lawful sustenance. Go do that. That's it. Stop competing with one another for everything that's going to distance you from Allah. To the point that religious knowledge becomes like that. Prayer becomes like that. Fasting becomes like that. Going to the masjid becomes like that. We cannot just be basic brothers and sisters because of this type of misdirection of what we're doing. It's just my advice. And we'll stop here. But it's something to think about. You know, and we're suffering as a people the most from this. You know, this competition stuff is killing us. Seriously. The desire to excel and outdo one another is killing us as a whole. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. And we don't notice how it manifests itself in very basic things in the deen, in our basic life, in our basic dealing with each other, right? Let's learn sincerity. Let's learn sincerity. And everything we learn through every act of worship, let us try to find a sincere connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Tayyib. And I hope that no one is I seem offensive to someone. So let me I don't definitely want to offend anyone. So please, if you took something I said as offensive, don't. I didn't mean to offend you. But I'm trying to slow us down to get us somewhere, right? I really am trying to help us, seriously. And I want to see us helped. And I believe we can be helped, you know. But we got to be in a position ourselves to be helped. Yeah, I didn't. That's why I may have. I didn't read. I'm just, if I did offend someone, I didn't mean to offend you. But I'm realizing I may be harming you if I don't slow us down. And I don't want to harm us. So I have to slow us down. And I mean slow us down to concentrate on what we're doing so that we can progress, right? Because I'm watching and what I'm seeing, we got work to do before we're out of here. Before we check out, we have a lot of work to do. So we should put ourselves in a position to do that work. جزاكم الله خيرا وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. بارك الله فيكم والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.